On today's episode of Left Off the Map, we're looking at native ingredients, specifically Tasmanian natives, and pepperberry is the one we're going to focus on for today's episode. Henry Terry is going to head off with David Goff and learn a lot about the Indigenous people of Tasmania and things called middens. But before we get into that, I'm going to show you a fantastic take on a Rueben sandwich. A Rueben sandwich is one of my favourite sandwiches. It's a great breakfast or lunch sandwich. I'm going to show you how you can make one with a slight twist. It's got salmon pate and pickled fennel instead of pastrami and sauerkraut. First thing I want to do though is shave my fennel. So I've got half a bowl of fennel here. Take the stalks off. I want to shave this finely. So really sort of thin slices. This is going to act as our sauerkraut or cabbage component of our Rueben. I'm going to pickle this first. So I want really thin slices because I'm doing a cold pickle, so there'll be no cooking. All right, so we've got some thinly shaved fennel to go on top of our bread and salmon pate. So into a bowl, got equal parts vinegar and water. So that's about 200 mils of vinegar. About 200 mils of water, some sugar, equal parts again, and then some aromats, star anise, pepperberry. Pepperberry's got a beautiful purple colour, so it will slightly stain the water. So a good pinch of pepperberries, pinch of fennel seeds, and a good pinch of coriander seed. And then a pinch of salt. I'm going to stir that until my sugar and my salt dissolves. So this was it's a traditional or old style way of preserving food. So what pickling does, the salt, the vinegar and the sugar stops the ability for bacteria to procreate. So bacteria can't do its thing and make more bacteria, which is what ends up spoiling food. So if we put our vegetables, no matter what it is we're pickling, into that pickling liquor, it's going to preserve it and keep it for longer. I'm going to let that sit for 15, 20 minutes just to allow the pickle to start doing its thing on the fennel. Now, we're not really after the preservation here. We don't want to preserve that fennel. We want the flavour that the pickling liquor imparts on the fennel. So it gives it a sweet, sour and aromatic flavour and also starts to cook it a little bit. A lot of people make hot pickles. So for a hot pickle, all of what we did there would go into a pot. We'd warm that water up to a boil and then you would pour that boiling water over the vegetable and it would cook the vegetable and then preserve it. We're doing a cold pickle. So it means that our fennel is going to be slightly crunchy instead of soft and cooked at the end of it. While I wait for that to happen, I'm going to char my bread. I've got a couple of bits of sourdough into a griddle pan and get that nice and crunchy. Just want to char both sides. Because the pate, the pickle, it's all soft, if I've just put that on normal bread, the bread would end up soggy. So I'm going to char my sourdough so that it can hold up to the liquid that's going to be in that pate and in that pickled fennel. My toaster's been cooked. My fennel's been sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes. Just want to taste it and make sure that it's done what I want it to do. I still want it to be crunchy, but I want the pickling liquor to have done its thing. I want it to have softened a little bit, and I want the flavour to be in there. It's perfect. So now you can put that into a container, put it in the fridge, and you would have pickled fennel ready to go in a salad, on top of a sandwich, on top of some fish, whatever it was that you were doing. It's a great way of preserving food, but also adding a great amount of flavour to food. If you get to a point where you open up your fridge and you pull out your cooler section, you've got carrots that are getting a bit old, fennel that's getting a bit old, any vegetables that are getting a little bit old, and you're not sure that you're going to use them in time, pickling is a great way of preserving them and adding flavour to them. They can sit in the fridge and you can grab them whenever you want. So we're almost ready to put our sandwich together. My sourdough, I've got some seeded mustard that I want to put on one side of my sandwich. I just spread that on your sourdough. My pate. Don't be shy with the amount of pate that you put on there. The whole idea of this sandwich is the pate itself. Spread that on. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit more. It's a really, really good pate. You could make your own if you want to, but when you can buy an artisan pate like this that is so good, you might as well do it. All right, pickled fennel. Got some paper towel here. Let's pop it onto your paper towel. Just so you're not transferring a huge amount of that pickling liquor onto your sandwich. We have toasted the bread, so there's less chance for it going soggy. All right. And my fennel, top of my pate. Lid on top. That is my version of a salmon and fennel Rueben. I know it's not a Rueben, but that is the inspiration I've used to create this sandwich. And it's gonna be an awesome sandwich. You can imagine biting into that. You got the crunchy bread on the outside, soft pate, slightly pickled fennel, that seeded mustard, heaps of flavour, using those pepper berries, which create, they have the pepper flavour that your normal black pepper has, but they're kind of fruity. They have a sweetness to them, which marries in really nicely with the fennel. So to learn a little bit more about native ingredients and Tasmanian Aboriginal history, we're going to head off now and catch up with Henry Terry and David Goff as they explore the Tarkine region on the west coast of Tassie.
Henry, this is an example of a West Coast hut or a coastal hut. As obviously it's inside this diorama, which explains a few different sorts of huts and living sites. This side over here is more of an East Coast structure, a temporary structure, right. And that's a West Coast structure. The West Coast huts were really well built. It's a really wild area on the coast there, so they've got to be really, really strong. Yeah. They were sort of like finding the area where you're going to build your hut, close to resources, so you need fresh water, you obviously, your food sources, and to be comfortable. So, and digging a depression into the ground. Yep. So digging down and then building your frame on top. So you're actually crawling down inside it a bit. Okay. So you're already lower than the wind because you've dug it down. And means you don't have to build such a high-topped hut as well. So, yep. So it was sort of documented well in people's journals that came ashore, looked at huts, saw smokes and fires. All the way along the west coast there was smokes and fires from families living in huts on living sites. So they're made from tea tree or dogwood, bent over and tied into this, really strong frame, and then covered with the natural materials that are around that area.
So Dave, can we see this for real?
We can see, well, not as in huts on country, but we can we could certainly go to the west coast of where some of our ancient living sites are, for sure. Okay. But sort of, what's your schedule like today, and how much time have we got?
I'm wide open. I've got all day to learn about your history and culture, so I'd love to go and see.
Oh, this is exciting because I love to show it. And showing it educates people what it is, and so they get to know, a bit more. And that's why I do what I do. I love it. So yeah, I'd love to show you, Henry, for sure.
Well, let's get going. We'll jump in the car and head off.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. Let's go. I'm going to take you to the west coast, some of our oldest living sites.
Yeah.
We call, it's called Tarkine. We call Tarkine, Aboriginal name for that. The areas along the west coast. It is, like I said, really ancient living sites.
Yeah.
rock marking sites, hut depressions where our Aboriginal people lived as families in villages for thousands of years.
Dave, I always associated the Tarkine with rainforest, but this is also part of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Tarkine, or as we like to call it, back to a traditional name, Kenya. It's multiple landscapes. It's from the last large tempered stretch of rainforest with over 1,000-year-old myrtle trees to the rugged west coast coastline of our ancient Aboriginal living sites.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that's where we are today in amongst. I just wanted to bring you out here to show you some of how our people lived on this coastline for thousands and thousands of years.
I'm noticing all these shells here. They haven't come here naturally, have they? They've been actually brought up onto this sand dune.
Yeah, that's right. So this dune is basically, what people will call today, they refer to this as a midden. If you look up midden, it refers to refuse or rubbish. So, I don't like to be calling it that, because if you call something a name that refers to rubbish, you'll treat it like rubbish. It is our cultural heritage, it's our landscape, and it's made up of each one of these shells. Aboriginal people dove out into this rugged sea and brought these shells back to feed to their families.
Remarkable. And they must have been doing this for a very, very long time, because this whole dune is covered in these abalone shells and all sorts, really. It's remarkable. How long do you think,
tens of thousands of years of people living on this part of country. I mean, I wouldn't want to try to attempt to date we will always say we've always been here and we always will be here. So our people, we have creation story that refers to our people in this landscape and living and supporting each other, as families here.
It's quite an amazing feeling. I mean, for me, coming in and seeing this and being able to literally pick up thousands of years of history. I mean, for you to be able to pick up literally your ancestors' food that they had in their hands all that time ago.
Yeah.
Amazing.
With the tools and what's in these landscapes and these places, they're a lot of these areas are documented Aboriginal heritage sites. They are under a Protection Act, which means for people to come across and see these and look at them and pick them up, that they must remain on country. Yeah. They've got to be just left where they are. Yeah. Taking them in is against the law, and which is, we've really pushed for many years as Aboriginal people to try to protect our heritage from being removed or damaged and things like that. Yeah, so like I said, it's really important that they remain on country.
Absolutely.
So, putting them back down.
All through Tasmania, and for that matter, all through Australia, there are Aboriginal artefacts everywhere. We probably just don't notice them. And learning about those middens was unbelievably interesting, I'm sure, for Henry and for me. To carry on with the native ingredient theme, I'm going to use pepperberry again. And I want to show off the flavour of the pepperberry. So I tried to think of a recipe that really highlights pepper. And cacio e pepe, which is basically pepper and cheese pasta, is really one of those dishes that the pepper comes out. The pepper becomes the hero of the dish. So I've got a pot of water on. I need a lot of salt in there. Always talk about when you're cooking pasta, season your water. The water should taste of the ocean. Spaghetti. And if you're making a cacio e pepe, spaghetti is probably the hardest pasta to make it with. So if you're making it for the first time, you can go for a short pasta. I'm only going to make enough for one serve. So I only need enough pasta for one serve. Now the reason why the pasta and the pasta water is so important is because all this dish is cheese, a little bit of oil, a little bit of garlic, and the pepper. So we'll get started on that part of the dish. My garlic, 1 clove of garlic, thinly diced. Thinly diced, thinly sliced is what I meant to say. Into our pan. on a really gentle heat. Almost going to confit this garlic with some oil. And you can tell that Charlie is in the kitchen today because we've got a little grape stuck on top of our oil. Thank you, Charlie. All right, very, very slowly am I going to saute that garlic off. And this pasta, according to our packet instructions, takes about 11 minutes to cook. Always go slightly under the packet instructions, so about 10 minutes to cook. So this is all going to happen in 10 minutes because I want to take my cooked pasta straight from my pot into my pan. Turn that right down just so I'm gently cooking that garlic. And then I'll get my pepperberry ready. I want a good amount of pepperberry. This dish is about pepperberry. Run the knife through it. So these aren't like normal peppercorns. They're called pepperberry because they are little berries, but then they're dried. And I know you can't smell it, but it's a sweet, fruity, peppery flavor. It's really, really, really nice. It's almost a cross between Szechuan and normal black pepper. Right. And then I want to get my cheese ready. The finer I can grate my cheese, the more chance I've got of this dish working. So I've got a microplane. Microplane a good amount of cheese onto my board so I can add it straight away. And then I'll add the rest of it as I need to. You want to use a hard, sharp cheese like Parmesan or Pecorino or something like that. Now, apart from the heat that comes straight from the boiling water, there isn't much other heat added now. So I can turn that off. My garlic is cooked through. Everything now comes together in this little fry pan once we get our pasta cooked. So once this is cooked, once I'm happy with it, I'm going to take the pasta into the pan with a lot of the pasta water, and the cheese and the pepper will all go in. And then I'm going to mix it all together. The cheese will melt, it'll mix with the starch that's coming over from the water, and that will bond and bind everything up. So you don't end up with just lumps of melted cheese, water, oil, and pepper all sitting on their own. We're going to try and make a sauce around this pasta using the emulsifying action of the starch, or the binding action of the starch that's in that pasta water. All right, so you have to really be careful of the amount of cheese that you add, making sure you take enough pasta water in. If it starts to split, add a little bit more pasta water and really, really, really shake it. And that hopefully will save you. So I've got enough for sort of it's one serve here. Bring over, look in my bowl. A little bit more cheese and pepper on top. And that really is a dish that showcases the quality of the pepper. Seeing as though there is only those ingredients in the dish, you really do get an understanding of how good and how sweet and fruity that pepper is. And I think when you're working with native ingredients, you do want to showcase the native ingredients. So you want it to taste of pepperberry. If you're using quandong, you want to make sure it tastes of quandong, and so on. So with this dish, if you are new to pepperberry, this is a great one to try to get a real understanding of what pepperberry tastes like. Like I said before, the fruitiness, the heat from the pepper has that Szechuan kind of heat, but it has a fruitiness that you don't get from any other peppercorn. So give it a try, get your hands on some pepperberry. Then you start using pepperberry in lots of different ways, in lots of different dishes. But this is the perfect place to start.